Hi guys, Amy here with your midweek updates for week two. I just wanted to start today with a couple of administrative things. You will notice that I do post a weekly update at the beginning of every week, at the end, or excuse me, in the middle of every week, like I am right now, and then at the end of every week, I just post a kind of final comment on the discussion. And I put that in the discussion, but I also put it here on the news feed because I want to make sure that everybody sees it. So my point here is that I want to make sure that you always check for this beginning of the week update, because this is where you're going to find all the really important information about, contextual stuff as far as where we are in the semester, where are we going, where have we been kind of thing, and then all the things that you need to actually complete during the week. And I post a lot of things here in news, and so sometimes it can get buried. And so as you're logging in for the first time, maybe on Monday or Tuesday of the week, make sure that you scroll down and make sure you find the beginning of the week update, even if it has been buried by a couple of other things in the news. The other thing you can always do is go to content and go to the module for that particular week. And I at least always have the to-do list posted there as well. I won't always have quite as much of the contextual information and explanation of things I want you to know, but I'll at least have the objectives, and so make sure you're checking the to-do list in the content as well. And then, of course, I wanted to give you some comments on the discussion this week, but I also wanted to point out as you're getting your reading matrices back for week one and completing those for week two and in the next few weeks, I wanted to point out that I do have a discussion forum set up for people to ask questions or discuss ideas about the reading matrix assignments, or to post examples of successful reading matrices. So if you've gotten a 5 on a matrix, you can post it there. You guys did do a really good job with those last week, and so I did give some 5s, and I would love for you guys to be able to see how hard you're working, because some of those are just completely covered and you've written all over them, and it's really impressive to see how much information you can pull out of the text. And then I do also have a general questions forum here. If you have any just random questions that are not necessarily related to the discussion, or something you would email me about but you think the other students might benefit from, you can post those there. And then this is the last week to complete the Student Introductions extra credit discussion assignment. And so if you haven't replied enough to get all 10 extra credit points, make sure you go back and do some replies. And that reminds me, before I go any further, I also want to mention that the syllabus quiz is due Sunday night. So make sure, if you haven't taken the syllabus quiz yet, that you do that by Sunday night so as to avoid the drop for non-attendance. You have to participate in an academically related activity before the no-show date, so the introductions discussion or just emailing me isn't enough. So that's why we have the syllabus quiz set up. Okay, so going into this week's discussion, so far it's already been a big improvement on last week, which is awesome because last week was pretty good. So, we're starting at a high level and then going even further, which is extremely impressive, especially at this point in this semester. So that's really exciting for me. I'm already seeing some good exchanges happening. I did notice you guys bouncing ideas back and forth and kind of engaging in conversations with each other through the comments that are already there. And of course, you do still have till tomorrow night to finish those, so hopefully that'll go even further. I think this one was a good example of where, we have the original post. We have a reply. I even came in here and had a few things to say because I felt like this particular writer had injected some of her opinion in the paraphrase here, where she said seems to have a valid argument. And so I wanted to make sure she was aware that, it's really important to be objective when summarizing. And then she responded to me and responded to the comment that she received, and I can even envision this conversation going further. So again, I'm really looking for this kind of bouncing back and forth, just like you would see in a discussion in a face-to-face class. But I did want to pull out some examples just to kind of make a teaching moment out of it and show you where I saw some really good work happening that will be useful for you as you work on this first summary essay. And so I'm going to take the different parts of the discussion activities separately because they're kind of asking you to do different things and each one is important in its own way. But the first thing I asked you to do is pick out a quote that you thought represented the thesis and then quote it using quotation marks and add an attributive tag. And then secondly, paraphrase it in your own words, including the attributive tag as well. And I pulled out this example because I felt like, at least for the How Twitter Will Change the Way We Live article, this was the most accurate representation of the thesis, and this writer did a really good job putting it in their own language and grammatical structure in order to make a true paraphrase. So you see the original quote. They've actually had to kind of include two quotes to make it make sense, but that's okay because they're negotiating at least one attributive tag here, although this part would also need an attributive tag as well, although you do see that here. So the original quote was, "But I think there's something even more profound in what has happened to Twitter over the past 2 years, something that says more about the culture that has embraced and expanded Twitter at such an extraordinary speed. Yes, the breakfast status updates turned out to be more interesting than we thought, but the key development with Twitter is how we've jury-rigged the system to do things that its creators never dreamed of." He then finished with, "In short, the most fascinating thing about Twitter is not what we're doing to us, it's what we're doing to it." So I do think that this represents the thesis. We'll see why in a minute. In the paraphrase, I think it becomes even more clear. But in general, this is his main argument as to why Twitter is changing our culture in a good way. And it includes his primary reasons to support that argument, which is that we're actually kind of interested in the kind of chatty small talk things that we post about on Twitter, and because it's kind of come to this next level in the sense that the users have been able to modify it to their needs and it's adaptable that way. And so that kind of is comprehensive of his entire argument. And remember from the text reading that a thesis really does need to be comprehensive. So let's see how this writer has paraphrased this thesis. Johnson's take on Twitter suggests that aside from the mainstream breakfast status updates, something more intriguing has happened to Twitter over the past couple of years. The fact that the users have taken the original creator's purpose for Twitter and completely reworked it, making it a product of the users instead of for the users, insists that Twitter has developed to a point in which the creators hadn't even thought of. So again, we have the suggestion that it's changing our culture in a good way. We have the breakfast status updates. Now, I think this is probably a little too close to the original language. It would either need to go in quotation marks or be modified to actually be in this writer's own words. But otherwise, they do a really good job then hitting on that main point about how users are able to adapt it to their needs in this writer's own language and grammatical structure. So this is just one example. There were several of you who did a really good job picking out the thesis of the article and paraphrasing it in your own words. There were a couple of people who I felt like were, either being a little too subjective, or maybe they hadn't quite landed on the thesis yet, or when they paraphrased, they didn't change the language or grammar of the original enough. And I tried to comment on those things individually just so that you guys could get a sense for things you might want to work on when you're moving this into your academic summary essay. And so the rest of you, I think, did a pretty good job, or were relatively close at least. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, one of the best parts of the discussion for today was the way that I saw you guys bouncing ideas off of each other in your comments. And so I wanted to pull out some examples of comments that I thought were really good at addressing the remaining prompts. So in addition to just me asking you to pick out the thesis and paraphrase it, I also asked you to kind of reflect on the process of quote and paraphrase and what it was like for you and when you might want to use one over the other. And that's where I think a lot of the really good exchange of conversation happened. And so this comment here, I didn't find it very difficult to work in the attributive tag, and it does make the quote sound much more credible when there's a source before the quote, in my opinion. I thought I would pull this one out because it was pretty universal that you guys all said it wasn't very hard to do the attributive tag. That's good. I don't want that to be hard for you. It's something you're going to have to do like all the time from now on. So it's good that most of you feel comfortable with that. And some of you had even done that before. So that was good to see too. And then I pulled out this particular one because I thought that this was a good justification for why we do include these attributive tags. In addition to just giving someone credit, it does make the quote sound much more credible if there's a source before it. So it's a good way to be honest and give that writer credit, but it's also a good way to make your writing stronger because you're making your sources sound more credible, and therefore it's going to make your points sound more valid. Okay, I just really liked this one. I sometimes enjoy paraphrase because it's sort of fun by making your own revisions on it, almost as if you were taking a song you love and dissecting it, putting it back together with your imagination. So this person I think I remember from last week was one of the higher scorers on the musical intelligence, so it's not that surprising, I guess, that they would make this reference, but I did think it was a great metaphor. And, if you have to think about paraphrase in terms of whatever artistic medium is most comfortable to you, taking apart a song or maybe a work of art or something like that, by all means. I love it when I see students put course concepts into terms that are more familiar to them. So I thought that was a really good extension of the content. Um, this one was also very revelatory for me. I appreciate your all's honesty and your willingness to provide comments like these. So originally I tried to complete the process without reviewing all the reference material I provided, mainly because I was rushed for time. However, this time when I was unable to finish the assignment, instead of giving up or trying to wing it, I referred back to the chapter material, and doing so made all the difference. This is such a validating comment for me because I want the text to be meaningful to you guys. We do require the text, you have to buy it, and I do think there's good information in there. And so I kind of design these activities to apply the material that you're reading about in the text. And sometimes I don't think the students use the text, but that would be my number one advice to be successful in the discussions is read the text first, because you can actually apply the concepts in the text to what I'm asking you to do in the discussions. This was one that directly addressed that concept of when is it better to paraphrase or not. I feel like the best way to go is to paraphrase in your own words. This allows you to not only expand on the writer's thoughts, but also develop a deeper understanding of the subject matter. Yes, yes, yes. These are the primary reasons why we paraphrase. And so I hope that you guys are starting to understand that even though it's more work and it seems more difficult at times, paraphrase really is your friend. It's going to give you a better opportunity to work that other writer's thoughts into your own writing, and it's really going to show that you understood what you were reading. So it kind of brings it all full circle that way. And then on the other hand, if I want to tear down someone's contention logically, I'll usually quote them. This is absolutely true as well. If you are trying to refute someone's argument, it is a really good strategy to quote it directly because you're showing that you're not distorting it in any way. You are just presenting what they said, and then you're going to take it apart bit by bit in a logical way, and that is a totally good instinct that this person has. And then this last comment I just thought was a really good extension of the subject matter. I mean, when I talk about comments that apply the content and then extend the conversation, this is what I'm talking about. So I didn't ask you to think about, college culture or plagiarism, but that's where the direction went, or excuse me, that's the direction the conversation went in this discussion thread. And this writer says, do either of you think we as college students have become gun shy about paraphrasing because of the potential consequences? I would also wonder if we were to exercise the practice of paraphrasing on a more regular basis, would we become more comfortable and less concerned about the plagiarism aspect? And so I'm not going to answer this. I don't want to provide answers to these questions, but I would invite all of you to think about these questions because I think they are really, really interesting, and I'm really glad that this writer brought them up. So consider these and all the other questions that came up so far as you comment on each other's work for the deadline on Friday night, as well as provide your reflections for Sunday night. And again, when you do your reflections this week, please go back to your original post and then just reply to your own thread to put a final comment in there from you. And that way writers can see too, okay, she's done her reflection. I might go on to someone else to comment because that's kind of a wrap up to that thread. So I think I've covered everything you need to know for this weekend. Again, don't forget to check the updates at the beginning of every week so you have your to-do list. Great job with your comments so far. Please keep up the good work. Good luck with your comments and reflections, and always email me if you need anything. Thank you.